The general election next year, some stage, probably May. But there's still uncertainties, whether it be on the health front with this latest variant or whatever else comes, but also in terms of what the states do. And as I mentioned to Emma, we are awaiting Mark McGowan's announcement of his long-awaited transition plan, Kerry.
Yeah, and I think if you were sitting in Perth at the moment, you'd be saying, please, God, just tell us when things are going to open up. I have a niece over there who, she's very patient. She says everybody over here is very patient, but they all wanted to come home to the East Coast for Christmas, and clearly that's not going to happen. So I think it's that level of uncertainty, and obviously for people wanting to travel the other way as well. People are tired of booking flights and then cancelling. They're tired of organising holidays and not being able to go. And I must say, I suspect, we were always concerned about what it was doing to the Queensland tourism economy. I suspect it's actually impacting on the West Australian tourism economy as well, because just anecdotally, people who tell me they were going to the Margaret River for Christmas or in January, well, they're not going to go, but they're not even thinking about going back any time at all next year because they just don't trust when the borders are going to be open. So we need certainty, we need clarity. People need to be able to make those plans. They need to be able to catch up with their loved ones. And I think we're all just a little bit at this stage looking forward to some lights at the end of all tunnels like we have in New South Wales and Victoria.
Kerry, it is a situation, though, where Mark McGowan remains enormously popular. And I just wanted your reflections on that, because from what I'm hearing federally from both Labor and Liberal sources is that he could himself see 2 to 3 seats shift hands at the general election.
Yeah. Well, I think to be honest, I think there's concerns across all states about how the pandemic has impacted on people's votes. We know that during the pandemic, for example, it was certainly the case that people wanted to leave present governments in place because they saw them as a safe pair of hands. They saw them as people who've had an opportunity to get on top of it. So we've seen that happen. By the time we get to a federal election, we will hopefully be through the worst of the pandemic. Will it still be a driver in people's votes? I don't know the answer to that. I think the bigger driver will be whether people are actually feeling confident that the government can provide that economic security. And Josh Frydenberg must be feeling pretty confident about what he can do, given some of the figures that have come out this week. So, I think the pandemic, it will still be around. I mean, the pandemic, hopefully not. The virus will still be around. How everyone's dealing with it will hopefully be under control, and it won't be playing on people's minds as much as it has been for the last 18 months. But will it be a vote changer? I don't know the answer to that, Kieran, because I think we need to see what happens at the time of the election, how prominent it is. Yeah,
it's a good point, and it's one of those really fluid situations at the moment in a political sense, Emma. One of the things that Josh Frydenberg's been discussing this week, and I think quite reasonably, is raising the notion of boosting and quickly our migration rates. Anthony Albanese said raised some concerns initially about where's the focus on skills. I spoke to him earlier in the program. He reiterated his support, the bipartisan support for a strong migration program. Maybe was that a bit of a try at dog whistling at the weekend, Emma?
Look, I think it's unfortunate that we've got to the point where we can't talk about migration and skills base and wages in this country without being accused of dog whistling to racism. So the first thing to say is migrants are a good thing. We are, if we're not First Nations people, most of us are migrants, first, second generation, third generation, maybe fourth or fifth from the convicts. But we're a migrant country, we're a multicultural country, and migrants bring much more to this country than they ever extract from it. Having said that, I think what Albanese is concerned about is something that I'm concerned about. We've done a lot of work on this at per capita, which is the stubborn lack of wage growth over the last, not just through this pandemic, but for the last decade or more, and the failure of both public and private investment in skills training for our own workforce, for people that are already here, whether they're recent migrants or not, they're part of the Australian workforce. Migration is a good thing. Having a guest worker country where people are brought in, treated very badly, exploited on short-term visas that that are linked to their employment so that their wages are suppressed and it suppresses wages throughout the economy is not good, not for those migrant workers who are treated very badly in some circumstances, and not for the overall skills base and future of our economic recovery, because we need to invest in our people. We should be able to walk and chew gum, Kieran. We should be able to have a sensible conversation about the right levels of migration, about the mix between temporary and permanent migration, allowing people to make a life here, and the need to invest in our own people too. It's not a racist question. It's about the future of the country.
Kerry, there are two very important pillars to what Labor's going to argue at the election that Emma touched on there, and I think we'll hear about them at length. That being the skills question, of course, training domestically, but also that wages issue, which is potent. It remains a potent one, Kerry.
Oh, and it certainly is. I mean, and to be fair, I think both sides of the parliament have recognised that wages and the fact that they're not moving at any great rate, although it depends. Kieran, for example, if you want to be in hospitality, work in hospitality in Sydney at the moment, the wages are more than good. I mean, people are just saying to me they're paying extraordinary wages for people who are the least skilled in the kitchen. You know, the dishwashers are getting $40 an hour. So I think it depends. The whole skill shortage is playing out in terms of increasing those wages. The interesting thing will be when the backpackers come back, whether those wages will drop back again, because they often take up a lot of those jobs. So, but I do think skills, and you know, you're talking to a former minister who had responsibility for the skills agenda in New South Wales. I'm never going to argue against us increasing the skills level in this country. We need to do it in all ways, and it used to be just in the trades, but now, for example, it's in the IT space. We've lost a lot of expertise in the IT space. It's gone home, it's gone back to places overseas, and we haven't been able to develop it fast enough in this country to keep up with the demand. So, yes, skills important, wages important, and I think both parties will be addressing that coming up to the election.
Kerry, Emma, thank you both. Talk to you soon.